Get ready for an adventure through time as we unveil the top 8 weirdest wars ever fought. These historical conflicts are guaranteed to leave you scratching your head in disbelief. From battles over inanimate objects to wars waged by ancient Rome's greatest enemy, you won't believe what humans have done in the name of conflict. So grab your helmet and shield and get ready to explore some of the most bizarre and unbelievable battles that have ever taken place. The Therainop War. It was a clash between two ancient powers, the Thera and Sinope, that took place in the Aegean Sea around 700 BC. The war was fought over control of the important trade route between the two city-states, and quickly escalated into a full-blown conflict. But it was the bizarre tactics used by the Syrians that made this war truly unforgettable. Instead of fighting on land or at sea, the Syrians resorted to something even more unconventional: fighting in the air. That's right, the Syrians unleashed poisonous kites against their enemies. These weren't your average childhood toys. They were deadly weapons equipped with sharp metal points and enough poison to kill a man. The kites were designed to swoop down on unsuspecting soldiers and deliver a lethal dose of poison, leaving the battlefield in chaos and confusion. The Thracians were caught off guard by this new form of warfare and struggled to defend themselves against the airborne assassins. In the end, the Syrians won the war, and the use of poisonous kites became a legendary part of military history. The Cat War. It was a strange and unusual conflict that took place in ancient Greece in the 6th century BC. The war was fought between two powerful city-states, Athens and Megara, over control of the small island of Tinos. But it was the bizarre reason behind the war that made it truly unique. You see, the people of Athens believed that they had a right to the island because it was home to a sacred cat sanctuary. The sanctuary was dedicated to the goddess Athena, and the people of Athens believed that they had a religious duty to protect it. When the people of Megara tried to take over the island, the Athenians rallied together and fought back. What followed was a series of battles that were unlike any other war in ancient Greece. The Athenians, under the leadership of the legendary Themistocles, used their navy to blockade the island, preventing the Megarians from bringing in supplies. They also used their superior military technology to bombard the Megarian forces with arrows and stones. In the end, the Athenians were victorious and the Megarians were forced to give up their invasion. The war ended with the establishment of a permanent Athenian garrison on the island, ensuring the safety of the sacred cat sanctuary. The Archaic Tune War. It was a bizarre and seemingly pointless conflict that took place in ancient Greece in the 6th century BC. The war was fought between the rival Greek city-states of Sparta and Argos over a piece of land known as the Archaic Tune. But there was one major problem with this territorial dispute. Neither Sparta nor Argos actually controlled the area. The Archaic Tune was a small, barren piece of land that was largely useless to both city-states. So why did they go to war over it? Well, the answer lies in the origins of the conflict. The dispute over the Archaic Tune can be traced back to a series of border skirmishes between Sparta and Argos. As the two armies clashed along the borders, the fighting eventually spilled over into the disputed territory, and before long, both sides were claiming the useless piece of land as their own. With neither side willing to back down, the conflict quickly escalated into a full-blown war. But despite the ferocity of the fighting, neither side was able to gain any real advantage. The mountainous terrain of the Archaic Tune made it difficult for either army to maneuver, and the lack of resources meant that neither side could sustain a long-term occupation. In the end, the war ended in a stalemate and the two armies returned to their borders. The Battle of the Golden Fleece. It was a clash between two legendary heroes of Greek mythology, Jason and Medusa, that took place in the ancient kingdom of Colchis. The battle was fought over the possession of a magical artifact known as the Golden Fleece, and resulted in one of the most epic battles in mythological history. The story goes that Jason and his band of heroes, the Argonauts, traveled to Colchis in search of the Golden Fleece, which was said to have magical powers. But when they arrived, they were met by Medea, a sorceress who was in love with the king of Colchis. Medea tricked Jason into helping her kill her father, the king, and then took the Golden Fleece and fled with him. When Aetes realized what had happened, he sent his army to retrieve the fleece. The two armies clashed in an epic battle that lasted for days. In the end, Jason and his men were victorious and they returned to Greece with the Golden Fleece. The Bean War. Imagine a war so trivial it's fought over a simple bean. That's exactly what happened during the Bean War, a bizarre conflict that took place in the 19th century between two Native American tribes, the Panaco and the Sioux. The war began when the Pinako tribe accused the Sioux of stealing their supply of beans, but the Sioux claimed that they had found the beans in the wild and that they were rightfully theirs. Unable to resolve their differences peacefully, the two tribes went to war. What followed was a series of skirmishes that resulted in the deaths of several warriors on both sides. Eventually, the war came to an end when a peace treaty was signed, and the Sioux were forced to give back the beans to the Pinako. The Dance War. This is a bizarre conflict that took place in the early 20th century between the British colonial authorities and the Herero and Nama people of German Southwest Africa, present-day Namibia. The war began when the Germans imposed a requirement on the local tribes that they must dance naked in public as a sign of submission to the colonial authorities. The Herero and Nama people saw this as a humiliating and degrading act and refused to comply. When the colonial authorities tried to force them to dance naked, the tribes fought back, sparking a full-blown conflict. The war was fought over several months and resulted in the deaths of thousands of people on both sides. The colonial authorities were eventually victorious, and the Herero and Nama people were forced to submit. The Pig War. The Pig War was a bizarre and potentially disastrous conflict that took place in the 19th century on the San Juan Islands in the Pacific Northwest. The war began when a valuable prize was stolen, not gold, not jewels, but a pig. The Pig War started when an American lineman Cutler shot and killed a British pig that was rooting around in his garden. The incident occurred in the mid-1800s when the San Juan Islands were a part of the contested territory known as the Oregon Dispute. The islands were claimed by both Britain and the United States, and tensions were already high between the two countries. When Cutler shot the pig, which belonged to a British subject, it caused an uproar. The British demanded compensation for the pig, while the Americans refused. Soon, the two sides were on the verge of war. The situation was further complicated by the arrival of troops from both countries, who were eager to defend their respective claims on the islands. For nearly 4 years, the islands were effectively occupied by British and American troops, with each side wary of the other's intentions. It was a standoff that could have easily escalated into a full-blown conflict. However, cooler heads eventually prevailed and the crisis was averted. The Pig War ended without a single shot being fired, thanks to the efforts of diplomatic officials who negotiated a peaceful resolution to the dispute. The San Juan Islands were eventually awarded to the United States, but the memory of the Pig War lives on as a bizarre and cautionary tale of how a seemingly minor incident could have sparked a major international conflict. The Mad Jacko War. The Mad Jacko War was a bizarre and little-known conflict that took place in the remote jungle markets of New Guinea in the early 20th century. The war was fought between the Australian forces and a mysterious enemy known as the Mad Jackos. The name Mad Jacko refers to the members of a group of indigenous people known as the Marandanam people who lived in the remote jungle markets of New Guinea. During the war, the Australians were unable to locate the enemy, leading them to believe that they were being attacked by supernatural forces. The situation was further complicated by the fact that the jungle market was a dense and impenetrable region, making it difficult for the Australians to navigate and impossible for them to distinguish friend from foe. As the war dragged on, the Australians became increasingly desperate in their attempts to find and defeat the enemy. They employed a variety of tactics, including setting traps, burning villages, and using poison gas. However, none of these efforts proved successful and the mysterious Mad Jacko remained elusive. The war finally came to an end when the Australians withdrew from the jungle markets, leaving the Marandanam people to live in peace. The Mad Jacko War remains a bizarre and controversial chapter in New Guinea's history. Some historians argue that the war never actually took place, while others believe that it was a real event that has been shrouded in myth and legend. We hope you enjoyed this journey through some of the weirdest wars in history. Which war was your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more exciting historical tales.